Question 1. In what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge conventions of real media products? Throughout the duration of the production of my cross-media package, I've analysed many different film products to pick out key conventional aspects to use them, develop them, or even challenge them within my production. For instance, I took inspiration off The Conjuring's poster, which is a very well-known horror movie. This is because it was a very conventional poster because of the rocking chair, which connotes the horror genre as it is seen in many different horror movies and trailers, especially when there's a spirit in presence. Also, the poster acquires a gloomy layout, which enforces the horror genre very well because of the rundown wall. But it's also very appealing to the eye too because it will make the audience feel that the places include supernatural activities, which will entice them to the production. Furthermore, I use a cell line which says from the makers of Saw and Insidious. This is because of the fact that this will attract familiar audiences. This is conventional for institutions to include this on their poster or media products because it allows them to attract existing audiences of their previous productions, and this will also increase customer awareness. So I believe that including this on my poster will make it seem more professional and conventional of the of a horror poster because existing magazines have already used this. For example, again, The Conjuring. Furthermore, I also developed the idea of including both protagonist and antagonist on my poster from The Conjuring, as The Conjuring displays the Annabelle doll, which is used to conventionally play a supernatural presence. Therefore, I developed this idea into my poster because it allows me to enforce the idea that my trailer is going to have a horror narrative. Also, I use the color white on the clothes of on the mise en scène of like the clothes of my antagonist. This is because a color white is associated with like the deceased and ghost. So this implies that my antagonist of the trailer is a spirit. This will furthermore allow the target audience to have more of an insight of the narrative and engage themselves with the production. I also challenge the idea of direct address because that within like my poster, this is because I wanted my product to be unique and have the antagonist looking at the protagonist. This will also imply that the antagonist is targeting the protagonist and wants to kill him. And carrying on from that, with my title, I decided to use a serif font because it is a simple but effective way to convey the horror genre, as many different horror movies have used a serif font in their typography in order to make it conventional. For example, The Conjuring and The Exorcist have done this in their posters to include this sort of typography. But I intend to make my title in a serif font as the audience will be able to recognize it throughout my cross-media package as it will seem familiar and will have its own unique look, and this will allow my audience to become more familiar with my overall production as a brand. For my magazine, I've took inspiration of Fangoria from my textual analysis that I've previously done. This is because this is through the fact that I've actually developed their house style because Fangoria is a really well-known and renowned horror magazine, and the house style of black, white, and red is conventional of the horror genre. This is because of the fact that red gives connotations of blood, which represents death, and that is a key element of the horror genre. White is a colour that's associated with the paranormal, so I thought this would be a very conventional colour to use as well. And the colour black represents darkness, which again is a key element of horror because the ideology that spirits and ghosts live in the dark. Therefore, I use these colours within my magazine as it emphasises the horror genre to my target audience, which will potentially attract them and engage them with my cross-media package. Furthermore, I use the idea of placing the date in a small size and sans serif font. This is because I want the date to stand out to the audience, but do not want to take too much attention away from the other elements of the magazine. So that's why I kept it relatively small. But within my magazine's front page, I've included relevant pictures such as photos of other trailers. This is because I want external audiences to consume my product who may be associated and engaged with um, them productions, and this will allow my magazine to acquire a larger following, especially due to the fact that my magazine is specifically a horror magazine. It is essential to include more content to gain a following from more audiences, as my magazine appeals to more of a niche market, whereas the likes of Empire magazine have content regarding many different genres. So this will allow them to have a larger following due to the wide range of content. So it's essential that my content and hairstyle is very genre specific to catch the to the horror genre to catch the eye of my target audience, as they will try to look for the key factors in order to engage with the visual aspects. So moving on to my trailer. Within the narrative, I thought about key theories to include to make my trailer more conventional to the horror genre. So I decided to use a theory. The theory I decided to use throughout my narrative was props main theory, and this is shown as my trailer consists of different characters with different roles. For example, the narrative consists of a hero who tries to repair the situation, and who in this story is Jay, the main protagonist, and he tries to save his wife's life. Furthermore, my trailer also consists of a villain who is the antagonist and causes drama and conflict throughout the narrative. In my trailer, the villain was the dead best friend Joel, who comes back to life and haunts the protagonist and his family, and possesses the protagonist's brother Aaron. And another factor of this theory that I've included within the narrative of my trailer is the helper, as Mott, who is Mott the priest, as he assists the protagonist and tries to repair the situation and tries to save the lives of Aaron and Nikita, who is Jay's wife. The reason behind me developing this theory into my narrative is because it is a very conventional way to structure a storyline, as many trailers have used this sort of structure. For example, Insidious's trailer conforms this theory as well. So carrying on from that, another theory I've decided to use is the Levi-Strauss binary opposites theory. This is evident throughout the entire duration of my trailer. For example, we see an element of this theory which is man versus woman, and this is shown specifically through the montage scene, and this shows how the female protagonist Nikita is shown to be inferior compared to the possessed antagonist Aaron, and this challenged the Conjuring's narrative, as conventionally antagonists tend to be a female character within a horror narrative, and I challenged this to enforce a common social ideology that women are inferior, which is represented in more in social realisms rather than horror. I believe this makes my trailer stand out more than others and will appeal to many different audiences, as due to the fact that we see a diversity of genders portrayed in different ways. For example, we see males portrayed as weak and also as dominant. For example, the main protagonist becomes weak compared to the other male antagonist, so that shows a different viewpoint of both. So I think this will catch the eyes of the audiences. Also, a reason for me to have a female protagonist is because through my research that I had discovered through my questionnaire, I realized that 73% of my audience wanted the antagonist to be male and the protagonist to be female. So linking to the uses and gratification theory, if I decide to have a male protagonist, this may mean that my audience will be more active in wanting to consume my product. Furthermore, I also developed the toddler of narrative theory into my trailer. This is a very key theory as it shows different parts of the trailer and their importance to the narrative. And the different elements of this theory are the equilibrium, and um, that is sorry, and that is when the people in the trailer are basically living a normal life with no problems. The other element of this is the disequilibrium. This is when there is a disruption um, within the narrative, and then there is a disruption recognized when we acknowledge what the problem is, and then what we have is an attempt to repair. And this is when possibly the helper comes into place and tries to resolve the situation. And after this, we usually have a new equilibrium. But I've not really used a new equilibrium within my trailer because, well, I believe that would give away too much to the audience, as it is only a trailer. So that the way that this theory is shown within my trailer is that you are able to see the equilibrium at the start when the through the mise en scène as the what do you call it, protagonists at this point, as all are shown to be protagonists, are holding party cups, which suggests a happy occasion, and but we see a disruption when Aaron gets a very strange phone call, which leads to the disruption recognized as we see the main antagonist Joel, who is portrayed in a white cloth over his head, as I tried to signify that he's actually a ghost, possesses Aaron, and this causes conflict throughout the entire narrative as the female protagonist Nikita is taken, which leads to the attempt to repair. And this is when Mark is shown, the priest, as Jay comes to him for advice on saving his little brother and his wife. And as I said before, we don't see a new equilibrium after this because, again, this would give away too much. One trailer that really inspired me was Insidious, as I analysed how the beginner also shows the toddler of narrative theory. I used the idea of disequilibrium to start with, as you can see through this clip now.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you sure you want to go through with this? I must do this for the two most important people in my life.
And I decided to basically develop this into my trailer, as the male protagonist Jay is talking to the helper, which is the priest Mark. I also use similar stings from Insidious. For example, when Insidious introduces the institution behind their production, which is Film District, they use quite a bassy sting. So I use this and also added a drum bass sound effect in order to instantly imply to the audience that the trailer is of the horror genre. Also, another reason for me to have a male antagonist is because of an ideology presented in Don't Breathe's trailer, where there is a dominant male and the female character is portrayed to be inferior to him, which is a common ideology within society. So the reason I included this in my trailer is because I wanted to raise questions towards the end of the narrative, as the female gets taken in my trailer, and the audience may ask questions such as, does she remain alive or does she die? Also in Don't Breathe, as you see towards the end of the movie, the female actually remains alive. Possibly, this may make my audience wonder if this may happen in the narrative on my trailer. Also, I developed editing from Insidious of fast cuts in the montage because this creates a really intense atmosphere and may entice the audience to engage with my trailer.